All right, what's up, guys? Back with another Fantasy Fishing Edge. We got a quick back-to-back week with Cayuga coming right after the St. Lawrence. What a tournament the St. Lawrence ended up being. That was great. There's a great article here on who you should have picked. But before we get into that, I want you to leave me a comment down below and let me know who you want to win, like your heart pick, your fan pick, versus who you think your fantasy pick is to win. Make sure you like and subscribe to the video on the channel so you don't miss your picks and miss the reminder. And follow along on Twitter and Instagram at HellaBass. So let's get into this. So Micah Frazier really sunk my chances of Chris Johnson being a perfect wire-to-wire pick. Here you can see Red Legs. He had the best overall fantasy team, which was a really good-looking bucket there. And then the perfect team, which nobody had. We did get Chris Johnson. He was the best pick in A. I don't think a lot of people had Micah Frazier. We got Dipalma right. We talked ourselves out of Gussie and picked Schultz, so that was a bummer. We had a chance to have a really big week this week. And then Kennedy finally showed up. And, of course, Carl Jakobsen did not this week. So that's kind of a wrap on what happened last week. Let's get into this. Let's look at a little peek at the social picks. So since today was the first day of practice, we're recording late at night. John Cruz showing off kind of a sneaky good largemouth on his first day on Twitter. We also have Jake Whitaker showing off a pretty healthy largemouth from his first day in Cayuga. So it's always fun to see the guys starting to sneak in and look at some of these fish. Even see Skylar Hamilton, maybe he's a little jealous here. So that being said, let's look at some of the other pundit picks this week. We'll start out this week with looking at Coy, also known as Corey Greathouse, and we will refer to him by his correct name as soon as he beats me head-to-head in a week. So until then, we'll just keep on going with Corey. He does acknowledge that he did pick too many people in his bucket last time on A. Overall, his picks are pretty decent. I love his Heron pick. Combs is a pretty good pick. I think the only thing I don't like about Combs is he's got a little bit of bust. He's not afraid to lose, so he's either going to probably do really well or he does have the opportunity to be not great. Hunter Shyrock, I think he does looks pretty good in bucket C, although my only concern with him is that maybe he likes to fish for shallow largemouth a little too much, and I think the deeper grass is going to dominate a little more being August in New York. So we'll see. Kobe Krieger did here well in June. That's his D bucket, and he's got Chris Grow as his bucket E pick. I can't tell that Chris Grow has ever got a top half of the field check in New York, so I'm a little afraid to pick him. Although any of the bucket D and bucket E picks are really hard. And to me, I think D and E are key to doing well in fantasy. If you can avoid the bombs in D and E and just get middle of the pack finishes, I think you set yourself up for a really good fantasy fishing week. So moving on to Pete Robbins, who had one of the better weeks last week. He says fixate on flippers. That's absolutely right. I think this, while there is some good smallmouth in Cayuga, I think largies are going to dominate. Again, he goes with Heron. I can't argue with that pick, but I do think there's a better flipper to pick, and we'll get to that in a little bit, so stay tuned. He's got Hartman. Hartman's from the area. He should do great. He has mostly good history in all his tournaments on Cayuga and Oneida and these lakes. He's got GDP. I can't go wrong with that. I love GDP. I think he's riding a good momentum train. Where I disagree a little bit with Robbins is his last two pick. He's got Morgan Taylor and Morris. Morgan Taylor, in his two Elite Series here, has finished in like the 60s and 70s. Not a great track record. I do think he's saying he's due. And then he says Rick Morris. And, to me, Rick Morris has got like 250 Bassmaster tournaments, but he just seems to have no confidence. And he's talking all about momentum and confidence. And I don't think Rick Morris has that right now, so I would avoid that. All right, lastly, jumping over to Thomas Allen's picks. He says it's all about momentum and grass. I can get behind the grass part. The momentum, I think it's more about confidence. But let's see. Let's take a look. He likes Lowen. And Lowen, interestingly enough, did really well on Waddington. But I always say Lowen's a grinder. If you need 10, he's going to get you 12. If you need 20, he's going to get you 12. So I think last week was a little bit of an anomaly for Lowen. He's doing super great. He's second A of the Y. Everything points to him having a good year, but I think he's going to do okay, but I don't think he's worthy of an A pick this week. I do think his dark horse being Matt Herron much better line, but we'll talk about who the better flipper pick is. Cruz, a good pick here, but his best tournament was in the spring, so we'll see if he can catch the deep fish on Cayuga this week. Again, Shryock, a decent pick, but I think a little too skinny. I'm sure he's going to have an okay tournament, but I think there's a better pick here in Bucket C. Hudnall, I do like that pick. Hudnall and another guy both missed tournaments this year. They're both hovering just outside of the Classic cut, and if they had fished those tournaments, they'd be sitting pretty good. So if that was a good sneaky pick, good percentage pick, I can get behind that. Not a bad pick at all. Lastly, Grow. Yeah, there's a lot of percentage in Grow. I almost took him. I thought about sinking or swimming with the masses, but then the more I researched, I realized that Chris and I fished the same tournament in lacrosse in a BFL, and I beat him. And I'm here giving you picks. So what does that say? So I'm sure Chris will have a good tournament, but I just can't get behind him this week. So let's jump into my picks and what I think is going to happen at Cayuga this week. So we had a good week last week at St. Lawrence. It could have been a great week if we'd done a little better in D&E. Starting with E, this is where I'm really struggling. There are nothing that really jumps out. I really looked through a bunch of their track records. There's just not a lot of guys that have cashed checks on Northern Fisheries. One strategy here could just be to take the top ranked person in E and hope for the best. Last week that was Kennedy, and he did right, and he actually moved up to bucket D. So here, Harvey Horne is one of the top AOI guys in bucket E. He did cash a pretty decent check last week at Waddington, so I'm hoping he's riding with a little bit of confidence. He's got a moderate percentage, and we're going to roll the dice with Harvey Horne. So hopefully that works out. Cross your fingers. That's one of the few picks that I'm nervous about this week. Bucket D, this is where I'm really going off chalk here. There's some good, ownership. Kennedy, in theory, riding momentum, should do well here. Kobe Krieger has shown a strong finish here in a June Elite Series tournament. Like I mentioned before, I do like Hudnall, but my sneaky pick way down here at 1% is Jesse Tacorante. He's also missed a tournament. He missed Gunnersville, and yet he's sitting right on that kind of bubble just outside. So if you look at his track record, he's got a lot of strong finishes in New York. And so that's what I'm looking for here. Somebody that understands grass, somebody that understands northern largemouth, can still catch a few smallmouth. He's not from the area, but he seems to understand these fisheries, and I think that's going to be a sneaky good pick this week. The rest of the way, we're going to go pretty chalk. We're going to ride the GDP train. Greg Dipalma seems to be fishing well. He's definitely more of a Chesapeake Potomac tidal river traditionally in a lot of his big tournaments, but he proved you can catch him there. He's got a little bit of history on Cayuga. I think being from New Jersey, he'll fare well in New York and just be a little bit better percentage play than Gussie. If you're looking for somebody else, I would look at Paul Mueller. He could be good. And I do like the sneaky dark horse pick of Bill Weidler that one of the pundits selected. So bucket B, we're going to ride Hartman. I was expecting more from him up on Waddington, but I think he redeems himself this week. Got over the Gunnersville hangover, and I expect him to have a good tournament. Pipkins has been up and down on here. I think Hanselman could be a sneaky good pick. From Texas, he should know how to fish grass. He seems not to be afraid of the big rods and big line. I expect him to have a good tournament there as well. So lastly, for me, if we're having a flipping tournament, I know Heron's a great flipper, but I know Feider was super irritated after watching the live coverage on Gunnersville and seeing that he missed that grass siphon bite that Heron got on. I promise you he's not going to miss that bite on Cayuga, and I think this is a tournament where you could see Feider actually win, and I'm looking for him to take down the W this week. He's pretty high percentage, but a little bit lower than Zaldane. I'm a little worried about Zaldane that he could get hung up on the glide bait. I see him having some big days, and then he can get a little too dialed in, and I think he could be hit and miss, as we've seen him do before. I think the Johnsons could be good here, but Feider's my guy. Looking this to be about low to mid 70 pounds to win this tournament. So there you go. Hope there's a few nuggets this week that help you make your picks. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next video and the next pundit picks. And make sure you follow along Instagram and Twitter at HellaBass. And we'll catch you guys next time. And hope to help you suck less at fantasy fishing.